Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this big guy, the Cold Steel Code 4. It's an interesting knife, and I gotta thank my buddy Jim for sending it along to check on out here. So, first off, a size comparison. Here it is with a Spyderco Delica, Spyderco PM2. So you can see this is actually a fairly large blade. It's got a little bit more cutting edge to it than even the PM2 here. Next to an Ontario Rat number 2 down here, which is positively dwarfed on every dimension. And an Ontario Rat number 1. And, what else? Oh, what the heck, the Graham Razel, which is another big beefy metal knife with kind of an odd-shaped blade. There you go. So, let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the bad, and the ugly of your Cold Steel Code 4. Okay, so in terms of good, first and foremost, this is a surprisingly lightweight knife. I mean, it's big in terms of dimensions, but in terms of weight, it's not that heavy. You're looking at 4.1 ounces, as opposed to on your Sleesh Bowie, 4.3, as opposed to PM2's a little bit lighter, but not by all that much. And your Rat 1 is at 5 ounces. This is not a heavy knife given the amount of blade that you're getting. And so that's nice. That's impressive. Speaking of size and dimensions and whatnot, this is a really thin knife. Almost awkwardly so. That's a complaint a lot of people have about this guy. I mean, check it out. This is a knife that is thinner than your Spyderco Delica. It is thinner than your PM2 in the pocket. It is thinner than your Rat 2, or even, well, way thinner than your Rat 1. This is a very thin knife, and so if for some reason thin is really important to you, this is a pretty decent choice. The steel on it is CTS-XHP. Wow, I am just tongue-tied this morning. But it's a really solid steel. Cold Steel used to use AUS-8 throughout their line. They moved to XHP, and it really helps. So that's beautiful. It is easy to take apart. I've got a disassembly video, and this was honestly a pleasure. I'd just been dealing with a bunch of Benchmade access locks, which are a displeasure. But this one, yeah, I like. That was nice. One nice little touch is that the clip is canted, so that this knife really does hang out of the way in the pocket. As it's sitting in your pocket, it'll kind of, on the right side here at least, it'll kind of go to the back of the pocket, and the bulk of it tucks away. And when that's coupled with the fact that this surface here is actually fairly smooth, the back spine here, it's pretty easy to get in and out of your pocket, even though this is a very wide knife. Is it perfect? No, but the fact that it's thin and fairly smooth makes it a lot more pleasurable than it could otherwise be. That's good. The lockup on this guy is a triad lock, which is a modified back lock, and, you know, the lockup is very, very solid. There's no complaints whatsoever about lock strength here. The ergonomics are okay on this guy. I think it would probably be better if I had bigger hands. I really don't, though, so I can't test it out. But they're not bad, as it is. Even though the knife is very, very thin, it does okay. There you go. I will comment that this is a Cold Steel knife, and usually Cold Steel makes fairly tactical or honestly Mall Ninja-y products, and this is actually pretty respectable. I got no real issue carrying this knife. I could do without the big Code 4 thing, but you know, they did a good job of making this knife a widely appealing knife. I got no real objection to the styling of this guy per se. It's not looking super violent, broken skull, or anything like that, so I like that. It does have all-metal construction, which is nice. These are aluminum handles here with XHP. I mean, there is just not any plastic in this, and that's really great. I appreciate that, because it makes the knife feel in the hand a lot more durable. I will admit I have a bias for all-metal in my knives, and just gear in general, but that's a really nice thing. And then finally, the price on this guy is actually pretty decent. You're looking about $80 here. And that's pretty good, honestly. Mostly because you're getting a big chunk of XHP with all-metal construction and a solid lockup and a decent platform. That's not bad at all. So that's good. So there's your good. It's lightweight, it's thin, very thin. XHP steel, it hangs back out of the way in the pocket. Secure lockup, decent ergos. It's not tactical or Mall Ninja, which is great. It's all metal and for a pretty decent price. Let's jump into your bad. So on the bad side, first off, I'm not a big fan of the non-committal spear point blade. Yeah, it's a spear point, but generally a spear point will have like a half grind and then a big swedge on the top to make it more speary. Here they've just kind of got a token swedge going on up here. It's not that I got a major functional issue with it, but it is, well, I don't know. It leaves me aesthetically pretty cold. One functional issue, though, is that with this very strong finger guard, which you need on a knife this slippery, you really do struggle to use this entire cutting edge. And you have that same issue with a lot of flipper tabs, too, but it is something you got to keep in mind. I'm not a big fan of the blade printing. This is a little nitpick, but take a look at the symbol between CTS and XHP there. What is that? Maybe the little R symbol? I don't know. That could have been done better. This has an exposed blade tang, which a lot of people are really going to hate. It doesn't particularly bug me, although this one's pretty egregious, having the cutout for the triad lock there. This little region in here is just bad. I don't know what they're going for. It's not a choil because there's not enough grip up here. Your thumb would be resting on top of this. And, I'd be afraid that my hand would slide up given how slippery this knife is. But it's also, why is this not further blade? What's going on here? They're not trying to stay under a legal line. I don't know what is up with this little region of the knife here, but I don't care for it, whatever that is. The thumb stud is in the slicing path. It's not so bad, but I do prefer when a thumb stud is out of the way. So that's a little on the bad side. And then finally, I'm not a big fan of the triad lock because it's just a bit more of a pain in the neck to get open relative to a normal back lock. Yes, the triad lock is a little stronger, but the thing is, if it's a bit more of a pain in the neck every time you take the knife out and put it away, you're paying a big price for strength that you're probably never going to use. So for me, I would have preferred a more conventional back lock here. It's not a huge thing, it's not ugly, but I don't care for it. So there you go, that's the bad. I don't love the blade shape, I don't love the blade printing, the blade tang is exposed. It's got this weird region going on here. The thumb stud's a little bit in there, and the triad lock ends up just leaving me cold. It's a whole lot of strength that I don't really need, sacrificing a bit of ease. So there you go. Let's go on to the ugly. So, some ugly here. 4 things. First off, it's a very slippery knife. This texturing, well, there is no real texturing here. This grip doesn't really stop this from being pulled out of your hand in any way. So, if you work in slippery conditions, this is not the knife for you 100%. That's just no good. That's probably why you've got such a big finger guard here, because they know that it's very easy to slide off of the thing. Next issue is that the blade-to-handle ratio is a little wonky. This is the amount of blade you have in the knife, and this is the amount of handle you have in the knife. That's a whole lot of blade-to-handle ratio. You got 3.5 inches of blade packed into a 5-inch handle. Ooh. That's a little much. Similarly, this knife is wide. It is very, very tall, particularly when folded. And part of that is because there's a lot of extra stuff in here. If the tip of the blade is right here inside the knife, that means that your blade is probably taking up this much of the knife. The rest of it is all backspacer, is all air, is all lock bar mechanism. It's just really, really wide, and in the pocket you can feel that wideness. It kind of hangs back out of the way a little bit, but this is still way wider than it needs to be. And even the blade is a little taller than it needs to, I don't know. So the proportions on it end up being a little bit odd. It's just a little bit awkward, and particularly in my hand, it does feel a little tall for being as thin as it is. So yeah, I'm just not in love with that aspect of it. And then finally, the last ugly thing is that it's made by Cold Steel. And right now, Cold Steel is being really crappy to the knife community. In addition to the questionable marketing stuff in the past, sides of beef on YouTube, which are kind of why the Knife as Tools community can't have nice things. Lynn Thompson, the founder of Cold Steel, has been shaking down independent knife makers who are using a term of art, Sanmai, which is a type of patterned steel. He's been sending lawyer letters and bullying these folks around because he was able to score a trademark for Sanmai 3. It's really terrible. He refuses to apologize for it and to give up the trademark on a term that isn't his to start with. This is a 100-years-old Japanese term. And so if you support Cold Steel, not only are you buying from outside the States, but you're also supporting a bully. And I don't like that. And so that's ugly. And that's something you do have to keep in mind anytime you buy something from this brand. I don't want to do that. maybe you're okay with it, whatever. So there's your ugly. It's slippery in use. The blade-to-handle ratio is wonky. This is just a little too wide in the pocket, and it is made by Cold Steel, a company which is really, really ugly lately. So this is a knife that's got a lot of good to it. I mean, it's all metal. It's got a good steel. It's got simple construction, and it's really not that tactical. I mean, Code 4 is the most kind of tactical part of it. And honestly, this is one of the very best ways to get an all-metal knife with a solid steel under 80 bucks. That's pretty impressive. But the thing is, it's also a bit odd. The proportions are just out of whack. You get a lot of handle for relatively little blade, and you get a very wide knife that really doesn't necessarily need to be. So, there's good and there's a fair amount of bad and ugly, too. It's a decent choice, though, if you are in love with the look of the knife for whatever reason. If you love the triad lock, you need that lock strength and you're willing to put up with a bit of a pain in the neck to get it. If you don't need any texturing, you only work on dry land, for instance, or you're willing to do some kind of an aftermarket grip tape or something like that. And most importantly, if you're willing to support Lynn Thompson, who's bullying independent knife makers, then okay, this may be a decent choice for you. But honestly, it's not a decent choice for me. It's not a knife that I'm going to be picking up afterwards, and it's honestly not a knife I'd recommend because of that. There are a lot of really good options in the $60, $70, $80 range, and this one is solid, but it doesn't come to the top of the pile for me. I hope it's been interesting for you nonetheless, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day.